Welcome to the Dripping in Black podcast, where we celebrate Black excellence throughout the Black diaspora. Here's your host, David V. Lewis.
What's up, good people all across the world? This is the Dripping in Black podcast. I am your host, David V. Lewis. And per usual, we have another fantastic guest. As you know, if you've been following us, this podcast celebrates Black excellence all across the world. This episode is no different. Today, our guest is Nataki Hudson. Correct?
Yes. Hi.
All right. Say hello to the world.
Hello, everybody.
All right. So we're going to get started just learning a little bit about who you are. So tell the world a little bit about Nataki.
Well, I was born and raised in Detroit, Michigan. I went to Detroit Public Schools, Cass Technical High School I graduated from, and then I attended the University of Michigan.
Go Blue.
Yes, and where I studied engineering there. And then I also attended Lawrence Tech for a master's in engineering and a business there. And since I've been out in Pennsylvania, I live outside of Philadelphia now. I've been here for about 11 years, worked as an engineer for about 20 years. And then more recently, started a business and been a business owner for the last 4 years.
Okay. All right. So excellent. Your roots are back here in Detroit, you said.
Yes, absolutely.
What part of Detroit did you grow up in?
So I grew up off 7 Mile and between the Lodge and Greenfield.
Oh, West Side.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And then I lived off 8 Mile and Greenfield right before I moved. As an adult, that's where I bought a home, and I lived there until I moved to Pennsylvania.
Okay. Interesting. So, this is a global podcast, and we're here we're from Detroit, and us Detroiters know there's a distinction between West Side and East Side. So let's engage a little bit about that. You grew up on the West Side, and I grew up on the East Side. What do West Siders typically think of us East Siders?
Well, I'm kind of maybe different though than most West Siders because we moved downtown when I was in about 13. So one of my high school years, I lived downtown, but I also attended Miller Middle School.
Okay.
And Whitney Young Middle School for like that last part of my 8th grade. So I'm very familiar with the East Side and East Side folks.
Okay. All right. So we are right by you.
Yeah. So I'm both, but I grew up on the West Side, but I have lots of friends from the East Side.
Okay. Yeah. So the world just needs to know there is a distinction in Michigan when we talk about Detroiters, East Side and West Side. We'll leave it there.
Yeah.
All right. Let's get into the business aspect of what you do. And so there's a business by the name of ComForCare.
Mm-hmm.
Tell us a little bit about that in your role.
Okay. So ComForCare, it was actually started by a guy, Mark Armstrong, in Bloomfield Hills in 1996. And the business was growing so fast. It was originally just only senior care, helping with activity days of daily living, bathing, dressing, grooming, errands, doctor's appointments, that type of thing. But it was such a huge demand that he was unable to service himself. And so he began franchising the organization in 2001. So right now, ComForCare nationwide, we have 200 and I think we're up to 30 offices around the country. I purchased the territory outside of Philly, where I live basically about 4 years ago. And since then, I've just been building the territory, growing it. We're actually one of the fastest growing offices in the system. And now we've expanded. We're also doing nursing services. And so it's good. I mean, coming along nicely.
Okay. So you are president of of one of the franchises for ComForCare. You got it started 4 years ago, and you're building on it.
Yes.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about the services that are offered at ComForCare.
So we deal with people who tend to have chronic illnesses, more than 2 or more comorbidities. So they may have diabetes, CHF, congestive heart failure. They are prone to falls oftentimes. We usually get called in when there's been an event, like a fall or hospitalization, a hip replacement, something not good has happened typically when a family calls us in to help them with their loved one. We also deal with younger people who, maybe has a trach or a feeding tube and they need nursing care. So we provide on a daily basis a LPN or RN to service someone who wants to live at home. They don't want to live in a nursing home. We can have a nurse come into your home and, provide the same level of care that you would get if you were living in a nursing home, or just to give your loved ones a break. Because oftentimes if people have, a serious disability or intellectual disability that are really severe, the family ends up being the caregiver, and then they don't get a break. And so this is where we come in. We get a lot of families where we have like a client, he's in his 40s, his mom has been his caregiver since he was born, and she needs a break. So, she brings the nurse in 12 hours a day during the day to take care of her child. And then, that way she can get some time off. So those are the type of clients we typically deal with. So they're very long-term often. Or if they're seniors, then sometimes they're more short-term if they're like on hospice or something like that.
Okay. So you're really providing a service for families, for their loved ones. And you're helping out the loved one that's having some issues from a health perspective, while assisting the family with relieving them with that responsibility.
Yes.
At least for moments at times.
Right. If they have family. Some people don't have family. And so the caregiver that comes to their home on a daily basis is really the person that takes care of them and looks after them, and their only connection sometimes to being outside, because they don't typically go a lot of places. Not most of our clients, some clients, but most of them are not getting out on a daily basis, even pre-pandemic.
Yeah. So I'm curious, what drew you into this particular field?
So when I had a pretty good career as an engineer, but I did a lot of traveling. So I had done work in product development. I was working in supply chain and procurement. And so the last role maybe not the last role, but the more recent roles I had, I was traveling anywhere between 30 and 50%, and which is a lot. And I have a family, so when I first started, that wasn't really that important. It was fun, and I could go see the world. I lived in Paris for a while, and travel China. Get to do all types of things. So it was fun. But after I got married and had started having a family, it wasn't a good fit anymore.
Got it.
I started thinking about what could I do to have more freedom. And so initially what I was thinking, which is not necessarily true, but I was thinking that if I own my own business, I would, have freedom. I can make choices. It's a local business. We don't exceed our territory. So, I don't have to worry about traveling, and I could be home and have flexibility. It seemed like a good idea at the time. Not that it's a bad idea, but it's not what I thought it was, just so you know.
Okay, so I think what I heard there was you thought it was going to allow you a little more time flexibility and freedom. And at least at this point in the game, you haven't seen that kind of being redeemed by you?
Well, it was the first maybe year and a half. It was a real grind. I mean, we didn't have, even though it's part of a franchise, it's not like McDonald's. No one's, just because you open up and you put a sign out, no one's going to come knocking on your door. So I was aware that, it's really a sales and marketing business. It just so happens that we provide home care, to seniors primarily, but it's really sales and marketing. So I knew I would have to get out there and market the business, but that's the easy part, really. I mean, getting out there and marketing the services, much needed. So that wasn't that difficult, but then it becomes a lot more complex once you start bringing in people, once you have clients that you have to service who have needs. And even though it's non-medical, it's very technical. And coming from engineering and product development, it was no drawings or anything that I was familiar with. It was totally a complete learning process from the beginning. So, I mean, in a way, it was good. It was from the ground up. We had 0 clients when we started, so I could learn, kind of slowly. But at the same time, it was a lot of new information. I just didn't know anything about it.
Yeah, I think that's what I find interesting, because you're in the engineering field. It's totally different from what you're doing now. You decide, I'm settling down a little bit. There's a plethora of things you can choose from, right?
Mm-hmm.
How do you end up in home care?
So a couple things. Yeah. One, it was a snow day here in Pennsylvania, and the phone rang, and it happened to be like a headhunter for franchises. Okay. So he said, "Hey, I can do," and I don't know how he got my name. I don't know if I filled out something somewhere, but he said, "Hey, I can do an assessment, maybe give you some ideas. Have you thought about owning your own business?" And I said, "Well," if he said it's free. I said, "Fine." So I answered some questions. He came back with 5 business ideas that he thought would be a good fit for me. And it was a variety of things. One, of course, was senior home care. He came back with like Junk King, where you go clear out junk from people's houses with a truck. Came back with an advertising business that was like, you put monitors or TV screens like in a dentist's office. I'm sure you've probably seen that type of thing. Yeah. It was a few different ideas, and the senior care really stuck with me because my grandmother is 91 years old. She's had home care and caregivers outside of our family for about 13 or 14 years now. So I'm very familiar with all of the stories. If I call her right now, she's going to tell me about her caregiver, So I was very familiar with the industry, about the need. And so it really, hit home for me because I do live in Pennsylvania. When I lived in Detroit, I lived 5 minutes away from my grandmother. So I was over there all the time. I probably was the closest person to them in terms of coming over there whenever they needed me. So it really, it was close to my heart, basically, is how. Yeah. And then, it's a good business, So, and I did study business, and I think I do have a good business acumen. So when I evaluated it, it was a good business.
Okay. That's what I was looking for. I knew it was a personal story in there somewhere. So yeah. I'm patting myself on the back for kind of asking enough questions to get to that. All right. So let's talk about ComForCare. What separates ComForCare from, other services like yours out there?
Well, I mean, there are a lot of competitors who provide similar service, and it would be probably good service, But I think what makes my office different in general is just the connection that I have with my team, my employees, with our clients. I especially before. I mean, now we're a lot busier, but because I did all the initial marketing, things like that. I was out into the community. I would do bingo. I would, bring things for them. We play games. and all of the buildings, senior buildings in this area, they all know me. So, that's what was different about us. So if someone calls and say, hey, we want care, and I'm saying, who is it? Oh, okay, I know her from bingo. So being in touch with the community has really helped our business, and just knowing and having our hands on the pulse. And the same with our employees, being able to relate to a lot of them, a lot of my office staff, being able to relate to them, empowering them, giving them opportunities and responsibilities that maybe they wouldn't get otherwise. I think that has made a big difference in my office, and with my team in particular, being able to retain people, because it's a high turnover business in general. But we have a great team. Some people, one of my caregivers, she's been with me basically since the beginning. With my first client, she's still with me now. Just being able to retain them and, relate to them and keep them working, keep their pockets, with money in it.
I think one of the questions that I have now is, so you branch off into a business, right? It's really entrepreneurial. I'm always fascinated about the entrepreneurial mindset as somebody who went to school to work in a particular field, got into that particular field, and is still currently working in that field. Entrepreneurs always impress me at the risk taking that it takes. So that's one part I want to have you talk a little bit about, just kind of that mindset to become an entrepreneur, to jump into that business arena. But then also I think about, perhaps as an African-American woman, what kind of additional challenges comes with that risk. So talk a little bit about the entrepreneurial mindset, and then talk about the challenges you may have faced from a gender and race perspective.
So I grew up in a family with entrepreneurs. So I always knew that I wanted to have some type of business.
Okay.
I guess like my grandmother owned a clothing store, used to be on 7 Mile Road back in the day. So I grew up going there every day after school. So I was really familiar with, businesses or owning a business. It's different though, because this type of business is so intense. It's very intense. It's a lot of responsibility. We have, it's licensing, like it's just a lot that goes into it. So I wasn't, I didn't know necessarily what I was getting into, but I knew that I wanted to have some type of business and be a business owner. My goal always was not to be the talent in the business.
Okay.
So that was really important to me. I wanted to have a business where if I wasn't there, it could still make money.
Okay.
So that was important. It was a big risk. I saved all of my money basically for many years. It's pretty expensive to buy into any of these franchises, really. I mean, that's a big risk for most people, especially African Americans. You need several $100,000 to buy into anything, really. So, and figuring out what the best, especially one that's going to generate, a nice amount of money. They do have franchises that start at 10,000 or, a lot more affordable, but you're not going to make nearly as much money.
Yeah.
So, since I knew that I wanted to buy a business, I was aggressively saving money. I mean, I didn't know what the business was going to be, but I was saving for it. So I did that for many years for this. But it was risky, and that's one reason why I was so aggressive once we did open the doors, is because, I walked away from a job, where I was, making, really good salary, and, I had 2 kids, and, so now we're down to 1 income. So it seemed like a good idea, but it wasn't, and the phone wasn't ringing, I'm out knocking on doors and they're like, no, thank you, and I do think that being, African American. I mean, the area where I live at is we're about 20 minutes. Well, no, we're about 20 miles. And miles in Pennsylvania is not like Michigan. If you're 20 miles from somewhere in Michigan, that's 20 minutes. But 20 miles in Pennsylvania is about 45 minutes. So we're about 45 minutes outside of Philadelphia. So it's not really that diverse. I mean, in the pockets of some of the towns, you'll find some Latino and African American people, but the majority of the people in this area are white, like 90. So me not being from this area, because the people who are from this community, the African Americans, they all know each other. They don't know me, or they did.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit challenging. And then being outside of the industry, the other thing, this senior industry is very incestuous. So people go from one nursing home to the next nursing home, one senior community to the next senior community, from the senior center over to this other senior furniture store. I mean, they all know each other. So I was completely an outsider in that regard as well. And then, it was no connection culturally, So it was a little bit challenging, I think, initially, being able to get the opportunity. But honestly, what turned the tide for my business, I started getting clients, was I connected with the African American. He was like a social worker. They are having this area, and he started giving me clients, and that turned the tide completely, basically. And then that's why I'm out in the community. When I talk to the ComForCare offices around, and they're like, "What are you doing today?" And I said, "Oh, I'm going to host bingo." And they're like, "Bingo? Like, why are you doing that?" I'm like, "Well, that's where the people are who need the services, you know." So I do think that I, had to approach it a little bit differently, and maybe a little more aggressively than some of the other offices. And then honestly, now we get off clients. They sign on with us, and they realize that we're a Black office, and they terminate services. We've had that several times, but most of our clients, they're fine with us. They love their caregiver. They don't care. But we have other clients, who they have a problem with it, or maybe they don't have a problem with the office per se, but they have a problem with having an African American caregiver. Have clients who have their preferences on who they want in their home. And, I'm not naive about that. So we just cater to them. We find a caregiver that fits, their preference, and we send them over there. Plus, we don't want to make our caregivers uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But it is a reality, and it is a challenge, but, we just work harder like we always do.
Yeah. All right. So great. I mean, that's a lot there. That was some of the things I was interested in hearing. So there's a couple things that I put together just listening to you. The fact that you were at a moment where you were at this crossroads, and then you get this call from a headhunter. To me, that's some divinity working there.
Yeah, for sure.
Then you're in Philadelphia, you don't really know anybody, but the business that you get into requires you to get to know people, and it allows you to get kind of what you're missing in the organic nature that it takes to get it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So to me, I see some divinity kind of tied in with that. So let's talk about, we talked about challenges. What would you say are some of the success stories related to, maybe your personal story or your story with regards to ComForCare?
Being able to connect with other women, to give them an opportunity. I talked to one of the young girls yesterday, and she, I needed a favor from her to work. And she said, "I'm going to go in and do it. I love you guys, and I want to get my own place." I said, "Okay, we're going to keep you working because we're going to get you a place, So being able to put them in a position where they can be self-sufficient, they can be independent, and take care of their families. I think that has been the biggest reward. I do love being able to help seniors, but I enjoy more being able to help the women who work for me. That's been really the most fulfilling part of it. And to see how much, I mean, because it is a labor driven business, but just how much money, the company has been able to put back into the community. I think that's been, that's what I've gotten the most out of, really, honestly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know, we kind of talked when we started talking via email. It was almost like you were concerned about, well, I'm just working my job. I don't know if this is, podcast worthy, but, I'm excited about this episode because you talked about your family being entrepreneurial and how that was always kind of stuck in the back of your mind, I would say. And there's a lot of people out there who don't have that family lifestyle, but stories like this can be inspirational for them. And then you said you had 81 staff members and 78 of them are women. I mean, you're impacting so many lives by living your life the way you're doing it. So I just want to thank you for coming on to the podcast. You are definitely worthy of what we're trying to do with Black excellence.
Thank you.
All right, so I want to lighten it up a little bit. All right, so there's one final question that we typically ask our guests. Have you ever been on a magazine cover?
No, I have not.
All right. So, but you did mention being in a magazine before.
Mm-hmm.
What magazine was that?
I was in Ebony magazine.
Okay. And you were featured in Ebony magazine, and that's quite the accomplishment, but now you're on the cover of Dripping in Black. Tell us what you think.
I like it. I like it.
All right, so that's our parting gift to all of our guests for coming out. We place you on our cover. We will get that to you. All right, Nataki Hudson, we thank you for coming out again. And there is one final question that I didn't ask. What's next for you? If you had a wish to take maybe your company to the next level, or to take yourself to another level, what would that wish be? Can you give us that?
Well, I definitely am going to continue growing the business with the everything that's going on right now and the pandemic. It's a huge opportunity for us because everyone wants to stay out of the hospital. So we are hiring and growing and taking on new clients every day. We're busier than ever. So that's going to continue. Personally, I just would like more time for myself, really. This last few years it's been very busy, with the business, with the kids and homeschooling and all of that. So just being able to continue to grow and develop, the business where I'm not, in it all the time, where I can have a little more freedom. What my initial goal was originally, I would like to get to that point where I can still run the business, but be able to have some of the freedom time-wise.
Okay.
I was going for initially. So it's just taking a little longer than I thought.
Okay. Do you think that's really just a matter of time, or is it a certain benchmark that you need to get to actually get to that place?
I am reorganizing right now. So I am taking some things off of my plate and, getting some consulting services and kind of outsourcing a few things to free up more time. So things that I don't have to be involved in. I don't have any problem with delegating to someone else. So it's just hard though when you're a new business and you're growing because things happen and change so fast. A lot of times you just can't react as fast as you need to. So you get overwhelmed, kind of quickly. So we're reorganizing and we're kind of transitioning. So we'll be poised to go to the next level without, so much of my sweat.
All right. So again, we thank you for coming out, sharing your story with us, and we'll be following your story and hoping you get that leisure time that you're searching for.
Thank you. Me too.
All right. So we'll ask everybody else to kind of stick with us. We're going to go into our final segment, the last drip. But again, thanks to Nataki Hudson for coming on.
Up next, the last drip.
A dripping in black thanks to Nataki Hudson for sharing her inspiring journey from engineer to entrepreneur. It was great to hear how she was able to leverage a good career as an engineer into franchisee and president of a growing home care business. However, we have reached the final segment of our podcast called The Last Drip. The last drip is the last opportunity for us to squeeze in a bit more of Black excellence for you. In this final segment, we highlight the common thread between our guest and our vast and rich African American history. For this episode, guided by Nataki's first career as an engineer, we focus on the remarkable career and legacy of one Hattie Scott Peterson. She was born Hattie Scott in Norfolk, Virginia, to Hattie and Uzell Scott on October 11th, 1913. To date, very little has been written about Hattie's years from birth up and through her 20s. In 1943, she married Donald Charles Peterson, thereby becoming Hattie Scott Peterson. In 1946, she graduated from the prestigious Howard University with a Bachelor's of Science in Civil Engineering. She is believed to be the first Black woman to earn a bachelor's degree in civil engineering. In 1947, she was hired by the U.S. Geological Survey, and she worked there for 7 years. In 1954, she became the first woman engineer with the Sacramento District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers. She would serve a long and distinguished career with the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and throughout her career, Hattie became a known advocate for women interested in engineering careers. Hattie would go on to live to the ripe young years of 79. However, even posthumously, Hattie Peterson is still blazing a trail for others as she and her husband left Howard University an endowment fund for scholarships, a fund that still exists today. Also, the Sacramento District of the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers presents an annual award in Hattie's honor, the Hattie Peterson Inspirational Award. This award was created to recognize an employee who exemplifies Hattie Peterson's integrity and professional qualities. Hattie Scott Peterson's many firsts in the field of engineering helped pave the way for women to become engineers in this country, like our guest, Nataki Hudson, and many, many others. She is truly an unsung trailblazer in African American history. And also, she is this episode's last drip. For more on Hattie Scott Peterson, check out represent365.com, library.ca.gov, peoplepeel.com, usace.army.mil, and qk4.com. My thanks to all of these websites for the knowledge. One of the joys of the last drip for me is giving myself the opportunity to dig into our vast and rich African American history and learn more and more and more every time. It is out there for us to learn for those of us who seek it, despite the fact that our school systems don't seem to value it as we should. So I implore you to do some digging on your own, in your own time, and bone up on your African American history. But as always, I leave you with, be good, be good, be good. It truly is a choice.
You have just experienced a Dripping in Black production.